This is Saturday Morning Mysteries.
And we're your hosts, Alexis and Grace.
Good Saturday morning. Welcome back to Saturday Morning Mysteries. We're your hosts. I'm Grace.
And I'm Alexis.
And today we both have, it's not the editing that sounds a little different. I've got a little bit of allergy voice because I live, what we just learned, in the country's grass seed capital.
The grass seed capital of America.
Yes, someone who has very bad hay and grass allergies. I've been on the Strugs bus. Alexis is on the post-Pride Parade Strugs bus.
I had a little too much fun today. Spent an entire day outside and engaging in festivities for a good cause, of course.
It was all worth it. Exactly.
It was totally worth it. But now here I am recording with a slightly
little off.
Slightly coarse voice, but don't worry, we feel fine otherwise.
Yes.
And we are here with energy and excitement, ready to still tell you some classic animated cartoon, true crime comedy tales. Air quote, in and out of air quotes.
Yes. And today is a hoarsely told tale from Alexis, her first Rescue Rangers episode, which I'm very excited for. So
yes, my first Rescue
Rangers. Support your local Pride Parade if it hasn't happened yet. When this episode aired, and take your allergy meds if you need, like me. And,
drink some tea. Herbal tea is great with honey. Surprisingly, my voice was slightly more coarse this morning before I had some enjoyable tea, so I do highly recommend that.
Good. Cool. And yeah, take it away.
I'm gonna take it away. And real quick, I'll say, last week, if y'all were listening in, you heard us mention that Rescue Rangers movie was getting ready to drop, I guess, on Disney Plus. It did not come out in theaters. It was straight to Disney Plus. Well, it has been released since we recorded that episode. At that time, I think we recorded that like 2 weeks before the movie came out, maybe. So yeah, now it's a few weeks later. The movie has come out, and I personally really enjoyed it. We'll probably do separate Toon Tangent or something on that another day. But just if people were confused last week watching, like, do they not know that movie came out like almost a month ago? Yeah,
we know.
We know, but we record things in advance and then release them later. So unfortunately, we just didn't have our timeline right with releasing it, but it doesn't matter because I think we still did a great job of introducing that movie in that video without knowing when it would be released or when, or without having seen it at that point.
Which, as you know, we are a half-researched podcast, so we knew the movie was coming out, but not the dude.
Literally almost spit my coffee out.
So we got half of it right.
Yeah.
Now we're here, people.
Half research. All right, I'm not even going to take a sip now. It's just going to come out. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to tell you a half-researched episode. What?
I'm just passing it to you.
Oh, gosh, sorry.
I'm not calling you out. I do the same shit.
Call me out there too. That's fine. So yes, I am here today to retell another half-researched episode of Rescue Rangers. And so today I would like to tell the story of that one time that the Rescue Rangers valiantly saved the day by settling a will dispute between bickering brothers.
Whoa.
Yeah, right?
I'm sorry. Before you even start this episode, I know you're going to make it very entertaining and funny, but I'm actually just imagining that's just paperwork. It's like just an episode of paperwork.
Yeah, they actually are there just to notarize stuff.
Yeah.
They call
it's actually the most boring episode ever, but it's also like Instagram versus reality of like being a lawyer is that it's just mainly paperwork. So,
but then everyone on the outside is like, oh my God, it's a will dispute. AKA Chip and Dale just had to run to FedEx Kinko's and like print something or whatever, or like make copies. Exactly. get notarized signatures. No big deal. No.
Yeah.
So this actually, yes, I will try to make it interesting, but the writers of this episode that I'll talk about, they actually did a good job enough making a will dispute pretty interesting. And cool. So the episode that this is based on, it's season 1, episode 8, if you're watching on Disney Plus, and it is called Pound of the Baskervilles. I see it in your eyes already. So, but before I get to the pun in that title, let me back up and say I am not an expert on wills, y'all. I did take one class in law school on wills and estates, and there were like a few questions on the bar exam about wills and trusts and stuff, but that information is long gone out of my memory. Great. So, as Grace alluded at the beginning, I half researched wills and estates and trusts in preparation for this episode to make sure that any relevant topics were at least somewhat properly covered. But I'm only going to be like touching the iceberg, or the tip of the iceberg, excuse me, in terms of like wills and that like body of law. So do not, please, take anything I say as legal advice or any like legal reasoning, legal opinions, etc. It's all just me joking. So back to the episode itself, Pound of the Baskervilles. Many of you dear listeners, including Grace, as I saw it in your face as I said that title, you may recognize this title because it is a play on the name of a famous story by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of the Sherlock Holmes mystery books or mystery stories. And the one that it's based off of is The Hound of the Baskervilles, which came out real quick. Go for it.
I'm sorry, this is a total side tangent, but I just had like this recovered funny memory that does tie into also what we just talked about of my very brief, only couple months stint in which I worked at a law firm. And then because it was like Lowell's the IP law firm, but I was just doing like the filing and paperwork and not the actual like law part of it, and it was to me so boring and easy that I just listened to books on tape the whole time, including I think this book, because I listened to shitload of the Sherlock Holmes books.
Did you? Oh my god, we're gonna have to talk about this after. Okay, anyway, I love it. Because so I'm gonna admit I've not read or listened to any of the Sherlock Holmes books, and I know that makes me kind of sad. So I definitely want to talk to you about that after / where did you get those audiobooks? I want them.
Spotify has a bunch of free audiobooks. If they're out of the Creative Commons.
Which it is, because this came out in 1902. Or not out of this is public domain. Sorry. Yeah, Creative Commons.
That's the word.
Anyway, other conversation for another day. But anyway, so yes, I've not read any of the Sherlock Holmes stories, but I've seen one of the 2, I believe, RDJ, Robert Downey Jr. movies, and I watched the show on BBC with Benedict Cumberbatch, which I really actually liked. And coincidentally, this episode from that show was my favorite one. So they did an episode based on this story, on the Hounds of the Baskervilles. So funny that you said that you love this story. And then I was like, well, I love the TV version of this story. So boom. I was very happy to kind of happen upon this Rescue Rangers episode. So essentially, and in like less than Spark Notes fashion, like truncated Spark Notes, that Sherlock Holmes story is about an attempted murder that was inspired by the legend of this demon hound. And Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, his trusty investigative assistant, they go to investigate and look into these hauntings and these murders or attempted murders before Sir Henry Baskerville, heir of the Baskerville estate, is killed by this canine apparition. And so this apparently was also, and Grace, you probably know this more than me, but this was Sherlock Holmes's first appearance since his death in The Final Problem, which I think was like a short story from the late 1800s. I don't know. Apparently they killed him off, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I feel like that's a hard name to say.
It is.
But anyway, apparently he killed him off. Yeah. And this was the story where they brought him back. And so that's why a lot of people think that it actually is one of the greatest Sherlock Holmes stories, because it like brought him back into the universe and like restarted all of his investigative tales and everything. Yeah. So a pretty big episode. Therefore, I guess it inspired these writers to name an episode of Rescue Rangers after it. And thus there are so many Sherlock Holmes related puns involved in today's episode. Buckle up, folks. Here we go. So, in fact, so that I don't murder you all with my coarse voice, let me take one more sip of water before I jump in here.
Most people don't see that before we fully start recording. Like I'll hit record before we do our countdown. Alexis always takes a very dramatic sip of water.
Always.
So they always have to comment on it like, oh, okay.
This time I'm going to be dramatic and take a big sip of water followed by a big sip of coffee as well, just to like dehydrate myself so that then I want more water, you know?
We get it. Pride was fun yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah, just because you had a good time.
Just because I had a good time and now I can't talk. Damn, I've got to drink more coffee and water. Okay. So our story, or this episode, it starts with two brothers, Roger and Howard Baskerville. Howard Jr., aka Howie, he is the older brother. He is like a large, almost like Gaston-esque, like from Beauty and the Beast.
Amazing.
Like British dude, except he's not as good looking as Gaston, like in the sense that he has a massive nose. He has much shorter hair and like a very big chin, but that same kind of like, you know, big, barrel chest, big, like strong upper body, extremely skinny, like pencil legs. And he also has like a pencil mustache as well, and like a kind of high pitch, nasally British accent. And then we have Roger, who is the younger brother. He is a tall, lanky man. He's got like shaggy brown hair, a very large chin. I guess that runs in this family, and a little bit of a slight underbite almost. And he's wearing kind of like tattered clothing. Like he's got patches sewn on his pant legs. He's got like rolled up sleeves and everything. Whereas Howard Jr., he's usually wearing like a suit or something a bit more distinguished, right?
Yeah. What animals are they? Are they humans?
They're humans. These are humans so far. Yeah. So we see the Rescue Rangers trying to resolve human interactions while helping an animal, though. Yeah. So we'll get to it. I'm going to introduce the animal that they're really helping out in just a second. But before I get to that, I just want to say that Roger kind of sounds like one of the Beatles. Like I'm pretty sure he sounds like George Harrison. Yeah. Or something. So rest in peace. But yeah,
amazing.
Very, very random. And anyway, so Roger owns this very large, very shaggy, light brown dog. His name is Macduff, and who also sounds like one of the Beatles. Which, to prove this too, I like actually YouTube some interviews with like George Harrison in particular, because I was like, I can't remember which one it was, but as I was listening to the interview with George Harrison, I was just geeking at how I was like, this is obviously the accent that the people were going for. Yeah. So just put that in your mind.
He was like long and like lanky and skinny, because like George definitely was.
It looked like him. So Roger actually, in my opinion, kind of looks like Paul McCartney, but like, then sounds like it's weird. It's obviously the writers of this episode only knew what like 4 British people looked and sounded like, and that's what they went with. Yeah, they're like, let's pick one of these voices and one of these appearances. Done. Boom. This is one of our main characters and his dog.
Incredible.
So Roger and Howard, though, they are the sons of the famous author, Lord Howard Baskerville, aka Howard Bass. And Howard Bass is known as like this world famous Probsky's like award-winning author of the Sherlock-Jones mystery stories. Sherlock-Jones, yes. And this dude, like, he is a prolific writer. So he has made so much money from these books, won so many awards, and thus his family is loaded. Like they have a fortune from these Sherlock Jones mystery stories. And they oversaw and lived in, aka the whole family, they lived in this massive estate, from having this fortune from the stories. And when I say a massive estate, I mean like one of those with like knight's armor lining the hallways.
Like a palace.
A palette, like giant portraits hanging like floor to ceiling, paintings, chandeliers everywhere.
Damn.
Just sprawling gardens and estate grounds and like wooded grounds behind them, and like a groundskeeper's shed, and just massive.
The whole 9 yards. Are they in England? Undetermined?
I want to say yes, but when I was rewatching the episode yesterday, I noticed that one of the main characters does not have a British accent. I'll explain in a moment.
Okay, sorry. I'm getting ahead of this episode. No, questions already.
It's fine because, up until like I truly did think that they were in United Kingdom or something as well. Until just last night. I'll get to it in a moment. Okay. You'll see why I'm confused. But we'll act like they are, I think.
Okay.
It also doesn't really matter, but
great.
We'll say that they're in the United Kingdom. So this dad, Howard Bass, unfortunately, he did eventually pass away. He's an older guy, and Roger and his son, Howie Jr., the author's son, Howie Jr., they're adults now. They're trying to get by in the estate, knowing that their dad's gone, but also they have this feeling that like their dad would never leave them without a will in place. And it appeared that he died intestate, which essentially means you never said what you wanted to happen with your property. You didn't write a will. You didn't tell anyone like, hey, put this here, or like send this life insurance policy to this person. So they're like, how could our dad have all of this stuff, all of this wealth, die and not want anyone to have it, like for all of it just to get sucked up and go to the state?
Every accountant and lawyer that this very rich family would not have advised.
No.
Not having this prepared. Okay.
Always put it in writing. Unfortunately, so many famous people have passed away without getting wills, either because they just didn't trust the system or just because they didn't think about it. I don't know why, but I'm pretty sure like Aretha Franklin did not have a will when she died.
Really?
Yeah. And there was someone else. I think it might have been her too, but like she had a lot of kids. And so then it became this very like intense debate. Yeah. Okay. Well, who gets what? Who was the firstborn? Who was closest? Like who? Anyway, write a will. Don't ask me to do it because I'm not an expert, but find someone who can. Anyway, so the sons started to realize though, shortly after their father's death, that the dad did actually write a will. But being this famous mystery writer, he was unable to distinguish the line between like reality and fiction, and decided to hide the will as to like encourage some sort of like detective like hunt akin to those in these Sherlock Jones books.
Oh, geez.
But unfortunately, I guess maybe the dad didn't realize that the brothers were as, at odds as they were, because this little game that he tried to plan for them, it actually led to an even deeper divide between them. And it really turned into kind of this like dangerous and honestly like borderline illegal fight to find where this will was. Okay. And so this investigation, it quickly divulged into something that honestly like required the help of the rescue rangers to resolve.
Great.
Because each son, they're trying to find it. They're trying to prove that they're the rightful heir of the estate. And on one hand, you have Howard or Howie. He wants to like destroy possibly the will because, well, actually, I'll get to that later. Okay. I want to talk more about like, let's talk more about how the rescue rangers get involved, right? So one day they're flying their wonderful the Ranger plane. Is that what it's called? I believe rescue plane, Ranger. I think it's the Ranger plane.
Great.
They are careening in and out of the strong storm. And actually, if you're watching the show, when the title credits or title opening, whatever first starts, when the plane is like going crazy in the storm, that's from this episode to like give you an idea.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, well, Gadget's having the hardest time trying to control this thing, right? And so the plane, it's overtaken by the winds and the lightning is making it hard to steer. And so the plane is like careening towards this very large, eerie looking estate / mansion that appears beneath the clouds. And Gadget, she's unable to make a clean landing. So she crashes the plane directly through a window in the mansion and just like right through that shit. Like, oh well,
Bug it.
Like clearly they're rich enough to fix this. They'll think it was just like a stick or like a tree branch that fucking flew through the window. Who knows? And so Chip, who I will say coincidentally, and actually not really surprisingly, he happens to be a huge fan of the Sherlock Jones stories. He notes once they crash land into this mansion that it reminds him of one of the mansions from a Sherlock Jones book called The Adventures of the Swelling Dwelling.
Okay.
And so right as Chip says this, the gang hears this very loud, chilling, howling noise echoing throughout the hallways of this mansion. And they're like, oh my God, is this like a demon dog? Like in yet another Sherlock Jones book, of course, inspired by Hounds of Baskervilles. And the gang, like they all run and hide as they hear this howling getting louder and louder. And what do they know? Macduff, the big, furry, lovable, scraggly dog, comes busting through these double doors down the hallway. And he's actually running away from something. And they're like, what the hell is going on? And it turns out Lord Howie, he busts through the double doors behind Macduff with a gun, no less, like a double-barreled shotgun. And he's just like shooting after Howie, or excuse me, after Macduff, trying to get him out of the estate. So we learn that Chip and Dale and the Rescue Rangers, they've crash landed into the to the Baskerville estate, or the Bass estate, and that Macduff for some reason is like running from Howie for his life, about to get murdered by his owner's older brother. Yeah. So they're hiding. The Rescue Rangers continue to hide because they obviously don't want Lord Howie to accidentally shoot them.
Smart.
And, Macduff, he's able to kind of get away from Howie because it turns out that Howie has, you can relate, he's got pretty bad allergies. And so he's like constantly sneezing, like as he's running after Macduff, and eventually like Macduff is able to like sneak away while Howie is like in a fit. Yeah. So it's good. And he actually runs into the Rescue Rangers, the dog does, and says like, oh my God, what are you guys doing here? We have to get out. Lord Howie hates animals. If he sees you, he'll kill you. He didn't say kill, but he's implying like it's going to get dangerous if we stick around here. So maybe he will kill you. They just didn't make it that explicit in this Disney afternoon cartoon. And so, the Rescue Rangers, they jump on Macduff's back like, okay, yeah, like that dude is obviously crazy. It's so cute because the Ranger plane's messed up, right? Because they had to crash land it. So they're like, well, Macduff is now our land transit, I guess. Like, hop on this lovable dog. And it actually ends up working kind of well. Macduff, like, they run out of the mansion. They're, going over these sprawling mansion or estate grounds. It's still storming outside. It's actually like super intense. Like Dale almost flies off of Macduff's back at one point. So the Ranger plane actually might have been more safe, but whatever.
Out in the elements.
Yeah. So they run out of the estate, run through these grounds, and Macduff takes them actually to where Roger happens to be staying. And it's kind of sad. And we're going to do some wild speculation at the end of the episode to tie this all together. Don't worry.
Okay, great.
But It's sad. It's this little shack. It's like that groundskeeper's shack that I was telling you about.
It's like
through the estate grounds, through the woods, down at the bottom of a hill, over a creek, probably like damn near a mile away from like the main house. This little shack. And we walk in, or Macduff walks in with the rescue rangers on his back. And, you know, it's even sadder. We look in and just see clothes hanging everywhere. I was like, what does this guy do for a living? Why does he have all these clothes here? And the camera turns to Roger and he's like hand washing a bunch of clothes. My suspicion, it's all of his brother's laundry. He literally is just in there, like clothes hanging everywhere. That's why his sleeves are rolled up and he's got like another, like, I don't know if it's like a waterproof shirt, some other like type of t-shirt underneath it to like protect his arms. And he's just scrubbing away while his brother is living in this beautiful estate at the top of the hill. He's down at the bottom in this dilapidated shack. Yeah. And Macduff runs into, it's pretty depressing and sad, but the wild speculation at the end. Yeah, the wild speculation at the end of this episode will make it kind of funny. So Roger is super happy to see Macduff when he returns back to the house. He doesn't see the rescue rangers. They kind of like sneak off of his back and hide behind a bucket or something, I think, in the shack. And Roger just asks Macduff, like, ooh, were you able to find the will? Were you, like, while you were in there, did you find Father's will? Which now we know, oh, that's why Macduff was up there. Okay. And Macduff, he just kind of responds with this like kind of low, sad growl, signaling that the mission failed. But Roger, he's like, oh, don't worry, boy. It's okay. You know, as soon as you find that will, we can take care of my brother, blah, blah, blah. But right before he's able to truly finish that sentence, he hears a banging and like a knocking at the door. And so he opens the door. And it unfortunately is none other than Lord Howie, who has walked through the rain in the middle of the night to accost his little brother for allowing the dog in the house.
Oh, come on, bro.
Come on. Knowing, though, that Lord Howie is dangerously allergic to animals. He's like, how dare you let him in here when I'm sneezing and whatnot. And Lord Howie, though, he's taken it to another level because he brought the fucking sheriff with him, Grace. What? He brought the sheriff, which also crazy that the sheriff was able to get there that fast.
Right. Like, and was like, yes, this is a crime.
This is something that I should be involved in. You're right.
He's
and also
that sheriff off for sure.
Probably, which I'll get to that in just a second. But to tie back to your question earlier about, are they in England or like the United Kingdom? This is what confused me when I rewatched this. The sheriff does not have a British accent. The sheriff like speaks like in an American English accent. So it was at that point, I was like, wait a minute. Why would the sheriff not be British? Where are they? So maybe they are in America. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to answer that question of yours and why I was unsure. That was the thing that made me unsure. Yes. So anyway, the sheriff is there with him and he's like, yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to take the dog away because of the trespassing and all of that.
What? You live on the same property.
Or do they? Well, you may live on the same property, but do you have the right to enter the house if you're not the owner of the house?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
Because the will determine who the owner of the house is, because the house was owned by the father. So the father had to pass it down to somebody. So that's the question. Who is the true owner of this house?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so Roger, he's obviously defending Macduff. He's saying, like, no, you can't just put him out on the streets, except like, that's not really what they were implying, unfortunately. I wish that they were implying putting him on the streets, but that's a little kinder than what clearly Lord Howie wanted to happen.
We already saw him shooting at the dog. So
yeah, at a minimum, he wants that dog shot, if not shot with. Anyway,
that's a minimum.
We're gonna keep it moving. So
keep going.
Macduff, he's like obviously he's very nervous about this because he can sense what's going on. And so he starts to growl, and that kind of scares the sheriff and Howie, which Macduff, love you, but you're not making a good case for yourself. Because then at that point, Lord Howie's like, well, come on, he trespassed, Sheriff. Like, you've got to take him. And he's growling. Look at him. He bit me, for all you know. Like,
oh my God.
He didn't bite him, but he tells the sheriff this. And again, it's a believable case because you've got this big dog growling right in front of you. So the sheriff, paid off by Lord Howie, probably, as you noted earlier, and also just intimidated by the size of Lord Howie, probably, and also like how he appears to be the owner of this massive estate. So he's like, oh, this dude's rich. I'm just gonna have to do what he tells me. And he does like bend a little bit and tells Roger that he'll come back the next day to take Macduff, because essentially without any proof that the estate is rightfully Roger's, Roger has no say over whether Macduff stays or goes. The sheriff has to listen to the owner of the house at the end of the day, or the owner of the estate. So they leave. Lord Howie is obviously very pleased with this. And Macduff, meanwhile, he like huddles with the rescue rangers and is like, okay, well, if we can go in and get that will from the estate, then we can prove that Roger is actually supposed to be the owner of the house. And then I won't die.
This just like gave me the like image of like, this is the team of lawyers trying to get someone off of like death row, like the death penalty. It's like
is
what this episode
Rangers.
is.
Yeah,
basically.
Gadget's like doing a deposition to like get someone to admit that they actually committed a crime and are ineligible to inherit something in the will or whatever.
Yeah. Like it got way dark in my head because of
dark.
Yeah. Anyways.
Well, it's going to get darker because not only are they going to keep investigating this will, they're going to use some scary and haunting tactics inspired by the demon dog of the Baskervilles to try to get this will out of Howie's or whomever's estate. So Macduff is telling them that since Lord Howie is always there, like he doesn't leave. I guess this guy doesn't really he doesn't have a life. I don't know. He just like stays in his estate all day, his big ass mansion. But since he's always there, Macduff is not really ever able to like sneak in and get by him to look around for the will, which also, how would this dog know where it is when the humans don't? I don't know, whatever. Right. Anyway,
can he read?
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, can he read these books? And which I have suspicions to believe he cannot, other than the fact that he is a dog. We'll talk about those later. But so Howie is saying Macduff is saying we need to get Howie out of the house so that we can find the will. And Gadget's like, oh, and we also need to get him out of the house so that we can get our ranger plane, because that is still just crash landed randomly by a window.
Good point.
And so Macduff says that the best thing that they can do to get him out is to scare him out. And this gives Chip an idea. He remembers reading about some scary events in course, Sherlock Jones story, The Adventure of the Ghoul Next Door. I wish I would have researched all of these different story names to see if they were like directly inspired by, I think so. Some of them definitely are. A couple of them though, I'm like, I feel like they just are saying random, The Adventure of the Ghoul Next Door. I don't know, like the girl next door or something, but that's funny. I don't think that's a Sherlock Holmes reference. Anyway, so the Rangers, they return to the estate. It's late at night still. The thunderstorm is still booming and, rattling outside. I can't talk. This is not news. And with the help of Macduff, they begin to like fake haunt the estate, particularly in Lord Howie's chambers, to try to scare him away.
Scooby-doo.
It is. It is, because like you see, there's like a painting on the wall and it just like starts shaking from side to side. And in reality, it's just like Zipper, like pushing it and stuff. But like Lord Howie can't see him. and like a window blows open and the curtains are like flying everywhere and Howie's freaking out, but really it's just like Monty and Gadget, like with a bellows, those things you use to like blow air onto fire.
Oh,
just,
yeah.
You know, whatever. And then Chip and Dale are just like in dresser drawers in his room, like pulling them open and closed. Amazing. So it just looks like there's chaos going on around the room. And since they're all these like little woodland creatures, he can't see them. And because it's like late at night. So Lord Howie is freaking out, actually. He's like hiding under his covers, you know, trying to say like, you can't scare me, even though I'm hiding under my covers.
Actively, yeah.
But then at a certain point, like the gang realizes that their scares aren't working enough. So they get McDuff to like do this nice little makeover. They like put flour on him. They sharpen pencils and paint them white and then put them in his mouth to look like giant fangs.
Okay. And
they send him into Lord Howie's chambers. And so when Lord Howie like sees him, he thinks it's the demon dog. Okay. And it actually like scares him quite a bit. So it kind of works. I know we're laughing about how ridiculous
it was successful,
but it works because Lord Howie, he jumps out of bed. He's screaming. He's like ripping shit off the walls, running. Yeah, like trying to like throw it at McDuff and run away from him.
Damn.
He runs into the hallways and he's like running into shit because he's just like so blinded by his fear that he's just freaking out. Like also like super rich kid problems, like breaking a bunch of obviously expensive shit in this mansion and just not even caring about
even blinking an eye.
I'm going to have to repay for that. Or replace that. These like honestly probably antique looking random artifacts that their father clearly loved collecting. None, not a one. Anyway. And so eventually though, McDuff, he's like really, really committing to this role. And the good boy, it's adorable, but he just gets a little too into it. He's like shaking around and hopping up and down. And the flour starts to come off and shake off of him. And like the pencils are falling out of his mouth. And Lord Howie is just like, oh, I now see what's happening. But he like kind of keeps playing with them a little bit like, oh, the demon dog, you're going to get me. And he grabs a fucking sword off of the wall. Cause you know how I said like they're knights and stuff, like rich kid problems, right? Like, Shank, let me get my saber and handle this, right? And he starts to like close in on McDuff, now seeing that it's not the demon dog after all. And McDuff is like terrified, like, oh my God, now what do I do? Like the rescue rangers aren't here to, I don't know. I guess they were still in like the bedroom changer. Yeah, I think they were still in like Howie's room or something. I don't know. But out of nowhere, there's a shield on the wall that was with the sword that Lord Howie pulled off. The rescue rangers like roll it down the hallway and Lord Howie like hits it instead of hitting McDuff, which it's actually very funny. It like sends a shock through his body.
Classic.
Whatever. And anyway, this gives them a chance to escape though. And so they're running down these hallways, realizing, oh shit, we're going to have to do something else because the scaring Howie only got us so far, / we don't have a good costume department to actually make McDuff look like a real
very limited dog.
Yeah, so the flour did not work too well. So they're running down this hallway and it's a dead end. There's just like this giant mirror and they're like, well, Lord Howie's right behind us. He's going to find us. We need to figure out what to do. And Chip is again channeling his favorite detective, Sherlock Jones. And he's like, oh, you know what? There's usually, in all these Sherlock Jones books, there's usually like a secret passageway or something. Yeah, you know, like if we just like press things or pull on the bottom of this mirror, you know, just everyone hit things.
The wall.
Everyone just touch shit. We'll see what happens. Yeah, smacks the
very
but
subtle.
Also they're like chipmunks and like mice, so them smacking a wall is like not gonna trigger anything.
And also not just like not strong enough, but also like human height wouldn't put something at like their ankles, which is like the size of the chipmunks. So they're just smacking their height, but it's like 6 foot.
Howard Bass. He's like crawling and like taps like the floorboard or like and this giant door opens.
Anyway, why wouldn't, a good idea.
Why wouldn't he design it for use of like chipmunks and mice and dogs? Yeah. And also, real quick, I have to say the book that Chip was referencing when you thought about the secret passageway, whatever, is called The Adventure of the Doctored Watson. So like that one is obviously a Sherlock. And now I'm like combining their names. I just said Sherlock Jones.
We'll just say Sherlock. Don't need to add the last name.
Damn it. Shirley. Rescue Rangers is messing me up. So anyway, they start like tapping just a bunch of stuff around that mirror. And actually, you know, something happens and they move the bottom of it and this like mirror slides open and the secret passageway is exposed behind this mirror. And so they walk in and the door closes back behind them. And Chip notes, another funny reference to Sherlock, he notes that it's a secret passageway just like the one from the Adventures of the Conan Doyle. Amazing and ugh at the same time. Which also, laughing about that joke has made it even harder for me to say Arthur Conan Doyle's name. Arthur Conan Doyle. I keep wanting to say, yeah. Like, again, Rescue Rangers, you're messing me up.
Fucking with me today.
So Macduff is worried now that they're like trapped, I guess, in this secret passageway that they are never going to find the will because they're stuck in here. And now Lord Howie is clearly awake. He's clearly onto them and they only have until tomorrow until the sheriff comes back to take Macduff away. So Chip, he assures him not to worry, saying that Sherlock Chip is on the case, much to the chagrin of the rest of his teammates who, I haven't really mentioned it, but they're super fucking annoyed with his Sherlock Jones references throughout this entire episode.
Like, you're not better than us, Chip, because you read more.
You're not. And also because like this mission is actually kind of scary for them. Again, giant man with a shotgun shooting them, thunderstorms outside, crash landing the Ranger plane. And this whole time, all that Chip has been able to talk about are these fictional stories, right?
Which also, it should have been Chip Jones / Chip Holmes, not Sherlock Chip.
Yeah, you know.
Chip's his first name. Sherlock's the first name. He did it wrong.
He did it wrong. So he's not even a real fan. Anyway, so Chip notes that the first thing that Sherlock Jones always did in his books was find some clues. No fucking way, Chip. Really?
Like you should do in your normal job as a detective.
You don't need to read a book to do that. You own a detective agency, dude. It's your job. And obviously Gadget and Dale are like, oh my God, we need to get home. I cannot stand this dude anymore. But they're at the same time, they're like, well, you know, a couple of the references you've made so far have actually worked, AKA the secret passageway.
True.
So they're annoyed, but they're still like kind of like willing to entertain his references. And so they're going through this passageway. It's very dark, or this like secret little passageway. And I can't tell if they're seriously trying to like work with Chip and finding these clues, or if they're just totally messing with him and making fun of him. Because Gadget and Monty and Dale are like all asking Chip if things that like obviously aren't clues are clues.
They're definitely fucking with them.
They're fucking with them. Gadget holds up a nail like, hey, is this a clue? And Chip's like, no, that's a nail. And Monty's like, what about this? Is this a clue? And I wish I could do Monty's accent, by the way.
I can't do an Australian accent.
It's like, I don't even know if you can call that Australian. It's like the weirdest accent I've ever heard. Anyway, but Chip is like, no, that's a chain. And so they're just all like showing him random stuff and like totally.
Also, Macduff is like, I'm about to be murdered, people. I'm on death row.
Can we not joke around right now? Like,
serious.
My owner is living in a shack, and I'm about to be murdered. Yeah. Clearly, have no concern whatsoever. Thank God, though, for Zipper, who often seems to be like the only serious member of the Rescue Rangers.
Yes.
He notices like these inscriptions on the wall of this passageway.
Oh, cool.
And he is like alerting the gang, and he translates the inscriptions. Obviously, he translates them into his like fly buzzing noises. But I guess I think it's like Monty or Chip is able to then interpret his fly buzzing into English to read the inscriptions as saying, bring light to the darkness. That's what these inscriptions on the wall say, which actually, that's a good saying for many reasons. I think that has a lot of real world applicability. Bring light to the darkness. Cool. And so they're looking around for clues related to this. Like, well, what could we light up? The whole fucking place in here is dark, but we're rodents. We don't carry lighters with us. And so they look up and they actually notice that there's a candle holder on the wall. And Chip, another great reference, not Sherlock related, but just a funny story name. He says that in The Adventure of the Wicked Wick of the Wax, Sherlock Jones opened doors, like secret passageways, with a candle holder. Classic. So yeah, Wicked Wick of the Wax. Though I actually, when I heard that one, I had to pause and laugh for a second while I was watching. I don't know why it made me laugh so much, just like Wicked Witch of the West, or I don't know. I clearly have a lame sense of humor. But so they all like get on each other's shoulders or whatever so that they can reach this candle holder, and they pull it down. And of course, another secret door within the secret passageway opens up. Again, one of those kind of mansions, y'all. One of those kind of estates.
Honestly,
it's massive. Like, for real. Imagine how much fun you would have, like, hiding from the world in that mansion.
Yeah. Would you bid? I would not purchase a palace unless it was filled with secret tunnels.
And then with another secret passageway inside of the secret tunnels. And you're going to love it even more. You're going to love it even more in a second when you realize what the second secret passageway was for. But first, real quick, I will say, since the candle holder thing worked, Dale and Gadget are like, okay, you've now gotten like 2 or 3 like helpful clues from these Sherlock Jones books. So they're also like, maybe we'll back off a little bit from you, Chip. They're like slightly less annoyed, but also just anyway, Chip is responding like, well, it's elementary.
Oh my God, elementary, dear Dale.
But instead he says, elementary, my dear dummy.
Damn.
Like, how
so they were definitely making fun of him, and he's like, fuck y'all.
Fuck y'all. Like, you guys were joking with me before. Macduff's life is on the line. I'm trying to take this seriously, dummy. Anyways, so they run into this secret room. They run into the secret room, and it's awesome because Gadget notes that it's like an office, actually. So imagine having this office in a secret room in a secret passageway.
Yes.
And it gets even better because Chip is like scurrying around the room. And he's like, oh my God, all of these objects in here are from different Sherlock Jones stories. Bear with me, audience.
From the stories.
From the stories. For example, there's a bent poker from The Adventure of the Hard-Headed Hottentot.
No idea what that one references. Got it.
I don't know either. Yeah. There is a doctor's handbag, like in The Adventure of the Soda Pop Surgeon. And last but not least, there is a blood-stained manuscript, like and Chip says, wait a minute, I don't believe it. this is the bloodstained manuscript from Sherlock Jones and the Adventures of the Mysterious Mystery Writer. Which also, though, yeah, back up. Why the fuck is there a bloodstained manuscript?
Yeah, like you guys have actually just walked into like a
another crime
style. Like
yeah.
This author was actually a serial killer and just wrote about his crimes.
Pretty much, yeah. It's okay though. He only killed other criminals, so it's fine.
Great.
Awesome.
Wow. Okay. This is wild. I do love this, but also get an actual authority in here. Where's the sheriff?
Where's the sheriff? He's too busy trying to kill Macduff.
This dog. Kill puppies rather than like solve get those cold case files, because
which also upon rewatching it, not only did I have to double check for the sheriff's accent to make sure, like, wait, this dude's not British, but I also had to make sure that he was in fact a sheriff, because the entire episode he's really just playing the role of dog catcher. Like, that's it. Which, like, I guess maybe in some jurisdictions the sheriff is also kind of like de facto the dog catcher, but like,
don't you have more serious crimes?
Exactly, pretty sure. Anyway,
you know what? Maybe this is in America because people are being over policed and call the police way too often. Yeah. So maybe this is America.
It probably is.
Anyway,
Howie is practically a Karen. Anyway, keep it moving. So at this point, after seeing, you know, all of these things, all of these like objects from some of his favorite Sherlock Jones stories, Chip is like, oh my God, we are in the workroom of none other than Howard Bass, the creator of these stories, right? So they have now made the connection that this estate is Howard Bass's estate. And Macduff, and Macduff, he's like, oh, you know what? Lord Baskerville did used to write books, but he didn't use his real name, which such a good but dumb boy, Macduff. He's so cute. But I mean, hey, he's a dog. He can't read, as we discussed earlier. I was like, I mean, he knew that his owner's father wrote books, but he didn't really know how famous of a writer he was until he sees that Chip is like so obsessed with this guy. And also, I guess all of these times that Chip has referenced Sherlock Jones, Macduff must not have known that that was like the main character of these books, because at any point in this episode, he could have been like, oh yeah, my owner's dad wrote those books. Yeah, right.
I thought that Chip and Dale already knew that because he was referencing it so much. He's just that big of a nerd.
He's that big of a nerd. Wow. Like before, so I didn't include this, but before they even got to the mansion, like while the plane is like careening through the storm outside, Chip was already in the middle of reading one of the stories. Like he was reading a story to the gang on the plane, to which they were super pissed about because they were about to fucking crash.
Crashing.
Like, please stop reading. Please, we're all terrified. So yeah, this whole episode, Chip has just been absolutely fangirling. Exactly. And then now at this point, which also this is coming towards the very end of the episode, now Chip is like, oh my God. And so he is so excited, saying that like this is the room where all of his favorite stories were written. This is the room where it happened, y'all. The room where it happened. And Chip and Dale are now in the room where it happened. And so Dale notes that they've got to find the will soon. Night is almost over. They've been dilly-dallying long enough in these secret passageways. And Chip is like, well, you know, if this is where the creator of Sherlock Jones lived, then I think I can figure out where to find the will, because I'm like, obviously his biggest fan. It's like, that's funny, though. This has always been the home where the writer of Sherlock Jones lived. You just now figured it out. So
you just put the clues together, buddy.
Sorry, but technically you should have been able to figure it out a while ago then, if, you know, that is your logic. But anyway, so Chip, he like puts on his more like Sherlock Holmes looking outfit, you know, like the trench coat. And
wait, he actually has one?
He has one. In like a magnifying glass. And what are those hats called?
I don't know, but I know exactly
those super fly, dope looking detective hats. Yeah, like he puts one of those on. He like changes out of his Indiana Jones attire, puts that on instead. Outfit. And he's like scurrying around this office. And he points up and says that the will should be behind a framed portrait that's sitting on the top of a bookshelf, just like it was in the adventure. This is my favorite one, the adventure of the will that wouldn't.
Oh, no, it wouldn't.
No,
okay,
it wouldn't.
For that will.
This will not give you your inheritance. No, ma'am or sir. So Monty, he like climbs up there to look behind this picture, because Chip is right. There is a picture on the top of a bookshelf. But when he gets up there, Monty's like, sorry, mate, like nothing up here. And Chip goes into like full on existential crisis mode. He like breaks the fourth wall, looks at the screen like, what? How could it not be up there? Because it was there in the story, and I'm obsessed with the stories. I know them cover to cover. And as he's freaking out, though, I guess, not really looking around him and just so inwardly like attacking himself for not knowing where. Yeah. Dale like just looks down at their feet, and he like pushes Chip over, and he's like, dude, we're standing on the will right now.
God damn it.
God damn it. And like literally, if you watch it, like as soon as Chip starts freaking out, the audience is like, dude, look down, because in very large letters it says will written on top of this piece of paper that they're standing on. Amazing. But obviously Chip is just that like freaked out and in crisis mode that he can't even look down. And so Macduff, he starts reading from the will, saying, I, Howard Baskerville, do bequeath this manor to my youngest son, Roger Baskerville.
Boom,
and as soon as they see that, they're like, fuck yeah, we got it. Let's go.
Do it.
But they have to get past Lord Howie first, because remember, he is still out there.
Right, with the sword.
Looking with the sword and or a shotgun.
Great,
looking for them. With multiple deadly weapons, yes, yeah. and a deadly, horrible accent as well, that nasally, high-pitched voice.
Classic.
So they try to sneak past him, but he catches them almost immediately as they exit this secret passageway behind this giant, luxurious mirror. And he obviously has also been looking for the will, because he's had suspicions that the house was supposed to go to Roger, but like he wanted the mansion. So he's like, well, no one can see this will. He grabs it from the animals and he just holds it up to a candle. Yeah, it's like not even like this is no issue, not a fight
he's
whatsoever.
Like,
he just give it,
drop it.
Bad boy Macduff.
Drop it.
Give me that little. Yeah. I mean,
honestly, like a good boy the whole time.
Honestly, like he could have yanked it from Macduff's mouth. I guess that would have worked too, because it would have ripped it up probably. Anyway, True. Whatever.
Not as dramatic though.
Yeah, right. So Lord Howie, he holds the will up to a candle, and actually, like the top of the will is like slowly starting to burn under the flame, but using some very quick thinking and logic, the animals, they open a window knowing that storm is still bellowing outside. Ooh. And it blows in a bunch of wind, blows out the candle, preserves the will. But Lord Howie, using his human intellect, is like, I mean, okay, I can destroy the will whenever I want. Like the thing that matters is now I have the will. Like, yes. Off with you, animals, off with you. But remember, he's very allergic to animals. So as the animals are like trying to get closer to him to get the will back, he starts sneezing and like goes into this like fit. Again, Grace, you can relate. You're not evil like Lord Howie, but you totally know he's pretty much like incapacitated by this allergic reaction. And so meanwhile, as he's like running around sneezing, Macduff also, just to like add insult to injury, bites him in the ass or something, I think. Like it makes him drop
said I bit before. You haven't seen nothing
you don't
yet.
Know me, man. You don't know. And so anyway, Howie, he drops the will, and the rescue rangers are able to grab it. And Chip is like, okay, go Howie now, Macduff. Now that Howie is like, he's not only is he sneezing to death, but he's also like on his ass, holding his ass because you just bit a chunk out of it. Macduff, you go down, get Roger, tell him to come up here. And then Will, meanwhile, try to like hide the will until you get back. So Macduff, he runs down through the estate grounds, goes and gets Roger. And the rescue rangers, they decide to hide in a nearby room. And they all like scatter throughout this room while Lord Howie, he like is able to get back on his feet. He's like pounding on the door, like, let me in, let me in. They locked him out. And he actually like bursts this door down again. Spoiled rich kid problems, not caring about destroying shit, like totally knock this door out, just get a new one. Doesn't matter.
Okay. Yep.
And he resorts to his favorite tactics. He grabs a gun off of the wall and he essentially just like starts shooting around this room to like find the rescue rangers because they're like in there fucking with him, like popping up and like, you know, It's almost like a whack-a-mole type of situation, you know, and he's just like shooting everywhere to try to stop them. Yeah, totally safe. Totally not going to be an expensive cleanup. I guess maybe now he's like, damn it, Roger's going to have this house at any moment, so I might as well fuck it all up now and like leave it to
Roger
him.
Problem now. Well, it's hard to take out of the wall, apparently.
They are.
Not my problem.
Sorry about it, Roger. But in perfect timing, Macduff is able to get back to the shack to alert Roger that something is going on up there. And just like the sheer excited barking of Macduff is enough for Roger to be like, let's go. This is it. Like he drops his shit, takes his apron off. Like his eyes are instantly serious and he like takes off running. Like
an anime moment.
It kind of was just with like worse animation, but it like he had that like intense look in his eyes of like, fuck,
it's
like
go time.
It's go time. This is it. Mighty Morphin Rangers attack, you know. Me and Macduff, like, put your fists together, boom. Yeah. And so just as they get up to the estate, Howie is like closing in on the rescue rangers. And it's like, again, there's like not a lot of struggle in this. I guess like Roger is very lanky and all of that, I guess, compared to Lord Howie, but like they're not physical with each other, clearly. Like Roger just kind of like grabs the will and runs off. Like you think that after all of this, like maybe Howie would like try to tackle him, or I don't know, maybe
I was going to shoot him.
Maybe, I don't know. Or, you know, maybe the rescue rangers like hand it off to him. Like there was just so much like shooting and shit. I was like, why is all of the anger being taken out on the walls and not on each other? Like,
right.
Anyway.
I thought Howie would like turn around and shoot him and then it's all his because now he's the only heir.
I guess maybe attempted murder is like one step too far. The sheriff was planning on coming back the next day.
That's true.
It would be a little messy if he came up and saw Roger like shot dead in the office or in whatever room. Point. Yeah, so I guess maybe that's scruples. That's why they weren't doing it. And so they get the will. I think like Roger gets it and then hands it off to Howie because Howie can run away or whatever. Macduff. I don't know why I keep saying Howie instead of Macduff. I'm so sorry. So Roger gets the will and hands it off to Macduff because Macduff can run away. And Macduff, fucking badass, he jumps through a window, Grace. He doesn't just like run out the front door. He grabs that thing, runs through a window, breaks it. Such a good boy. I hope he's okay. Boy. And he just makes a run for it. Dude's not fucking around. He's like, I will not die. Okay, this will
not
is going
today,
to
motherfuckers.
Not today. Bust through a window.
You know what? I'd like to think that at least one of my dogs would do the same for me.
Probably. I could see Mako doing that.
Yeah, Mako's a little psychopath. Mako would stab someone, actually. He'd stay and fight. Diary would fight and then try and save the day. But Mako would be like, let's do it. He'd have a little switchblade. A combo of Scooby-Doo out of context and Macduff fucking busting through this giant window. Exactly. When dogs go to the mat for you. So as Macduff is making his escape, which, by the way, like, I don't really know where he's trying to run to. He's just running away. In the rain with the piece of paper, so it's going to get really wet.
So actually, it's now morning. I guess this took up the whole night and it's not raining anymore. Okay. But I'm glad you mentioned that because it is very muddy outside. It is muddy outside, which I'll mention in just a moment why that's kind of important. So, but yeah, I don't know where he's trying to run to, but as he's running like through the estate grounds, the sheriff actually shows up and just like scoops him up in a net while he's running. Like he doesn't even go to knock on the door. He doesn't go to check in with Lord Howie first to be like, hey, you sure you still want me to take this dog? Were we able to reconcile overnight? Like, nope. He sees Macduff running towards him, scoops him, throws him in the paddy wagon. Macduff drops the will and it's like in the mud now. And like the sheriff just takes him off. Like, I guess the sheriff kind of sees it and is just like, oh, that must just be some random piece of paper that the dog happened to have. And so the sheriff starts going down the street, taking Macduff away. And Roger and Howie, they're like running out of the mansion, chasing after the sheriff. Well, Roger is trying to stop the sheriff and Howie is trying to stop Roger. And now they're fine with it getting physical because Howie like tackles Roger into the mud. So they're like both like covered in mud, like in their PJs, by the way, or at least like Howie's in his PJs. Yeah, like mud wrestling. And Chip and Dale and the gang, they're like, okay, well, those two are too busy fighting with each other. So let's actually show the sheriff this will. So they like run, they pick up the will and a bunch of different like catapulting type of, maybe Zipper helped like a
Rube Goldberg machine.
Somehow, I hate to say I can't exactly remember how, but Dale gets on the top of the roof of this sheriff's van and he like waves the will in front of the sheriff's face. Yeah, which would like probably cause a car accident, but okay. And the sheriff though, he sees it and he's like reading it like, oh wow, yep. Like driving in the mud. Okay, hold on, let me park. Yep, Roger owns the home. Yeah.
Wow.
Checks out. Yeah, and that's it. So after the sheriff sees that, he like pulls over, lets Macduff out, and is like, yeah. So it turns out actually that Howie, you're gonna maybe need to be the one who goes. And Howie's like slamming his fist in the mud, very upset, very angry that his plan failed, that his squatting on his father's property can no longer continue. And that's the end of, honestly, the main investigation, how they helped find the will that wouldn't. But so the next day, I guess, or maybe like the end of that day, we see the rescue rangers. They're back at the mansion. Gadget is like doing all the repairs on the plane while essentially like Monty and Zipper and Chip and Dale are just like chatting. Like Gadget's doing all the work naturally. And Macduff comes up to the gang and he actually has a gift for Chip. Like, fuck the rest of them, I guess. Like, you're the only one who gets something. But it is a nice gift. It is actually the last unpublished Sherlock Jones story. Whoa. And he's like, I think the old master would have wanted his biggest fan to have it. So super cute, that validation for Chip that, yes, I am his biggest fan and I get this unpublished piece of work that no one else in the world can see. But remember, this was a manuscript written by a human, so it's in normal size papers.
Bigger than Chip.
So when Macduff like hands it to him, it just like smothers him. It's like this giant manuscript, like this pile of paper, and Chip just like scurries out underneath it. And the gang's just like doing their classic like awkward laughing as like the camera fades to black,
freeze framing,
and the credits roll. Amazing. And that's it. That is the end of that episode. The Pound of the Baskervilles.
Wow, I feel bad for shitting on will lawyers or whatever the hell they're called at the start of this, being like, your job must be so boring. If every like will dispute is like this, I think you've gone to the wrong lawyering.
Yeah, right.
Sounds thrilling.
This is the juicy stuff. And I guess maybe I don't think that many wills end up this way. It's like all the wills you read about are like this, I feel like, in like textbooks, because they're like the ones that you learn the most from, you know? But in this case, I think that actually they could have used a good lawyer. Obviously, Roger, he could not afford one, washing his brother's clothes for a living. But real quick, let's do some wild speculation here to talk about this family dynamic. Because I have to
fucked up family.
It's pretty fucked up. Like, in a way, part of me wants to believe that the father probably didn't actually really want either of them to have this house, because like if he obviously gave it to Roger in the will, but if you really wanted Roger to have it, like just fucking give him the will. Why hide it? You know?
Right, why make it this mystery?
Yeah. So I guess maybe there was this thing where there was, even when they were younger, Roger and Howie were competing for their father's attention.
Oh.
And Roger was always the favorite. I want to say maybe there was like an out of marriage child or something there, because Roger and Howie do not look alike at all.
Spicy.
Yes. So I think perhaps that Howie, he's the older one, obviously. So, you know, first marriage, he's the older, only child. Happy, but he was always more into like sports and stuff, being the more like thicker frame, like big upper body, little legs kind of guy. The father wasn't really into that. Perhaps Roger was like a second marriage child, or perhaps an, you know, out of marriage affair, something, who knows.
Spicy,
and then but he was like a bit nerdier, maybe a bit more bookish, more into the things that Howard Bass, the father, was perhaps into, being an author. And so Howie, maybe the son Howie, was probably a little intimidated by this. Like, who is this younger brother who now is going to take over my place in the family?
As the only child.
As the only child. Yes, it's supposed to be me. This is my estate, not yours. And so I think that kind of just like kept building up as they got older and older. And maybe even Roger, being kind of that like nerdy bookish person, was like, maybe he was helping his father write some of these stories, or, you know, maybe like bouncing ideas off of, you know, each other for the stories. And Howie was like, he didn't like this. He's like, well, like maybe I could have some good ideas too, but the father just wouldn't entertain it, you know, like, no, you're just into sports. You keep doing your sports thing. So I think that maybe the father thought that Roger would be like more quick in finding out where the will was, because maybe like Roger had something to do with writing those stories that gave away the clues, or maybe he knew that Roger was like more interested in reading the stories. Howie never read because he's a fucking idiot. He can't read. So yeah, I feel like there's got to be some like bad blood that's been with them for a while. And I do think a lot of it stems with like that only child syndrome turned into like, oh, my dad remarried and had another child now. And now like I'm supposed to just like this dude, even though my dad likes him more. Yeah. That is my wild speculation about this family, and why it would have been a super juicy will to write.
For sure. Well, I think maybe to add on to your wild speculation of one, that clearly Howie Jr. was a spoiled brat. He was like having a tantrum. So like, for sure thought that he was just the bee's knees, and the dad was probably like, I cannot stand this spoiled brat. Like, what have we created and raised? Like, he's so spoiled. Yes, like they have to like earn this. Also knowing that maybe like he would destroy the will, so maybe he did have to hide it. But I do wonder if like there was also this slight tinge of like, yes, Roger was the favorite, but he would like pose these competitions between the sons regularly of like, like even small things of like the Sunday crossword, who can do it first? That's the one who gets the extra pancake today. But they were always like brain games type, like mystery solving type of stuff. And so that's even more why Roger would always win, and how it would be bitter as hell about it.
They were never
like having the mystery would make sense of like, it's a competition to see who gets it, the last one.
Yeah. And they were these things from their dad were never like competitions of like your physical abilities, you know. It was
Yes.
like, it was never, oh, hey, who can win in a game of football, or oh, one-on-one basketball or cricket or whatever the fuck they play wherever they are. I don't know. Like,
it was always brain games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
wow. That
yes,
is kind of a shitty dad,
maybe, yeah. Which also, I mean, I actually think that's the big takeaway from this story. Like, this father, like, this was not a healthy family dynamic in any way at all. And the sons were just, making it even more unhealthy. Or actually, no, I guess it was the dad who made it even more unhealthy, because he knew that the kids did not get along and still hid the will anyway, making it almost impossible to know who owned the house. Like, pretty sure that he was like laughing from the beyond. Like,
oh, for sure.
Look at those two little shits hating each other now more than they did back then.
This reminds me of, and the new season just dropped, and actually we need to watch the second season, and at Justin watching list, sorry, because I'm the reason why I haven't watched the second season yet, but of oh fuck, why am I forgetting it? Umbrella Academy.
Oh yeah.
In the first season, it's like the dad who adopted all these kids died, and the dad was just like horrible and turned them all against each other constantly in competition.
Yep, pretty much.
And it led to a lot of fucked up kids. So yeah.
Second season's good. You'll like it. I understand why Justin's upset with you for not catching up.
I know. I just sometimes after work, I just need to escape from reality with cooking shows and not serious.
Understood.
All the funny things. Anyways, great work.
Thank you. Fun episode. Yeah. We see the Rescue Rangers helping out George Harris, or I mean Macduff, the dog. And
George Harrison from Beyond.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Which, by the way, last thing I'll say, watching those videos of George Harrison, like the interviews, just to like make sure that was like his general accent. What a cool fucking dude. I feel like I'm really late on saying this, but like, yeah.
You are, but that's okay. Also,
just acknowledging it for this podcast. Like, it was an amazing interview.
Appreciate that. A fun thing, side thing to look up next, actually, is George Harrison's son. So great musician, all that stuff, but looks a spitting fucking image of George Harrison.
Oh,
it is
really
wild of how much they look like. Like one of John Lennon's sons, like Sean, who's also a pretty great musician, like, you know, you can tell he's his son and stuff, but George Harrison's kid is like,
it's like him.
Yeah, dead.
It's him reincarnate. Yeah. Wow.
I'm pretty sure George Harrison did believe in reincarnation. So yeah. Yeah.
He like had a kid with himself somehow. That's another podcast. Anyway.
Exactly. So anyway.
On that note, so until we find out how George Harrison had a child with himself, who should they tell? Who should our listeners, our audience members tell about this podcast, Grace?
You know, I think a really big takeaway from this week's episode is that no matter where you are, and like maybe I guess if you're under 18, maybe not, but if you're starting out in your career now and have any type of like asset to your name, you should probably make a will. So you should probably tell your will lawyer about this and write in your will to whoever you're leaving all of your things to that they in order to receive your inheritance, they must binge watch and listen to Saturday Morning Mysteries and continue to every week in order to get all of the installments of your inheritance. So a quick, easy one today, but make that a requirement in your will. Do it ASAP.
Make that clause 1, actually, so that if there is a will dispute, then like the first thing the judge or the magistrate, whoever the executor of the account, like they're going to look over it. The very first thing that will come out of their mouth is, I, XYZ, bequeath all that I own to XYZ on condition that they watch every single episode of Saturday Morning Mysteries. And if they do not, then instead I give everything that I own to XYZ on condition that they, it'll just keep going on and on. And so to that end, I would like to recommend you tell a notary. Not all wills. I don't think all wills have to be notarized. I think that might be a state by state kind of thing. But like, it never really hurts to have someone officially like look over that and stamp it. So if you are getting a will done, having a will drafted, or if you have any other documents or paperwork that needs to be notarized, while you're there, be like, hey, by the way, there's this great podcast. They like used the word notary a few days ago. and you should check it out. I think you may enjoy it. It's called Saturday Morning Mysteries.
I love it. You
Awesome.
can notarize that, baby.
Boom.
Bam. Great. Well,
Thanks. Cool. We'll be back next week.
Yeah.
More tales from Rescue Rangers. And until then, make sure you like this video if you enjoyed this story. Share it with your friends. Comment, subscribe, give us a review, a rating, whichever, wherever you're listening or watching.
All the above.
All the things. We love them all. We love you all. And I think that's all I got for today.
Yeah. See you next week. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Saturday Morning Mysteries.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share, rate, review, leave us a like, and drop a comment. We post episodes every Saturday and bonus tune tangents whenever we feel like it. So please subscribe so you don't miss the shenanigans.
And if you want to follow us on YouTube, click the bell under the YouTube subscribe button to receive notifications when new videos are posted.
And if you want to subscribe to the podcast, we have no idea what you're listening to us on. So just hit the big subscribe button on whatever app you're using. We believe in you.
Give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram at SatmornMist, all the abreves. And let us know if you have any episode or show requests by emailing SaturdayMorningMysteries@gmail.com.
Thanks to Jenna Kendall for the logo design and to Ava Sakiki for the music used during this week's episode.
See y'all groovy kids next week on Saturday Morning Mysteries.